swallowed up by an empty tomb. You know, all kinds of people here are finding that kind of victory, that kind of freedom. And they know that the only way that they are experiencing freedom these days is because God made a way. He supernaturally led them through their sea of addictions and fear and dysfunction to a much better place on the other side.
I lost my wife, I lost my career, I lost my physical looks and abilities, I lost my mind, all due to drugs. When I first started taking drugs, it felt good. You know, I was being led by the drugs. What happened shortly after that is I lost a bunch of weight. I lost probably 100 pounds. And people started to notice that I was on drugs. And I started to slowly lose my mind. My moral compass was completely off. You know, some of the things that I would do was to pretend to go on a business trip for a couple of days. And really what I was doing was spending a couple of days and doing drugs in the Las Vegas hotels. And then once the money was out, I would come back pretending as if I came back from a business trip. My wife at the time, she believed me. She would believe the lies that I would say because I was normally a decent guy. But when the drugs took over and the alcohol and the gambling took over, I would lie constantly. And she would believe it at first, and then she started noticing these patterns. And it didn't take long before she took the children and left for Illinois, and I stayed in Las Vegas, and that's when I spent the next couple of years a homeless drug addict that I turned to being a petty thief. I would live out in the desert in a tent with some other drug addicts, and we would go from the desert and steal stuff from Walmart and different retail stores, and we would sell those products in the parking lot of these places just to get enough drug money to get the drugs, scurry back into the desert, and spend days in the desert high on drugs. The trigger moment that occurred was when I would sit out in the desert and I would just think about my children. What are my children doing right now? What are they thinking? Are they being protected? Are they being cared for and loved? And I just asked God, I said, God, I have nothing left. Literally nothing left. And what do you have for me? I'll follow you any way you want me to do this. To me, it was pretty bizarre. He wanted me to go to the mission in Las Vegas, the Las Vegas Rescue Mission. And I made it there, and that's when I really felt this was the beginning of a journey, and it really was. Every single night at 7 o'clock, they would have people come in and preach at their chapel services, and half of it was worship music. And being a musician in my late teens and early 20s, it really brought back the worship in me to really, because I never worshiped God before. So at that time, it was 2 weeks of wonderful worship. I didn't feel any withdrawals whatsoever. I took my latest veteran disability check and I flew from Las Vegas to O'Hare Airport. And I had no idea what to do there. I just knew that God said, go ahead and do it. So I landed on O'Hare, no plan, no nothing. And over the intercom, I hear that there's a bus leaving for Rockford. And I don't know if I ever knew where Rockford was. So I asked the lady, I said, what is the area code for Rockford? She said 815. And I knew that was the same area code as my children. I took the bus from O'Hare to Rockford, and that's when I made it to the Rockford Rescue Mission. And I spent a year and a half at the Rockford Rescue Mission really working on my moral inventory, working on the things that made drugs okay, and had everything shift from drugs as a coping skill to the reality of God and what He wants for my life, and those truths, the truths of who God is. And it took that full 18 months of me living at the Rockford Rescue Mission for the truths to sink in of who I am in Christ, and for me to give my talents away. And the wonderful thing now is that I give back to God. I give back to the mission. I give back to my church. I play in the worship band here at Celebrate Recovery, and sometimes even the weekend services. I didn't fully know that God was with me until after the fact, until I started looking back at those times. I'm like, you know, God was with me at this point. God was with me at this pinnacle moment. And it took the retrospective look for me to really realize that God's with me. And now I can recognize it in today, is that, you know what, I know God's with me in this particular moment. I know it because He's done it over and over and time again.